set of the handouts. The comment I just made was that obviously the charts and graphs that appear in here are tiny. It's going to get posted up on the web in the morning, so if you have a real interest, you can kind of zoom in and blow things up. These are just a collection of the many, many charts and graphs and data points that we have available, and I think that continues to be the challenge in presenting the overview of the district. There is just tons of information to dig through, and you can take a lot of different routes on where to go with it. So what I've tried to do tonight is put together an overview from the district's perspective of where we are coming out of 2008, and model it a little bit on how we're trying to use data in the district. This is one of our initiatives, is looking at student assessment data. We implemented the benchmark assessments, or the common assessments as they're known, at the elementary school. We're doing them at the middle school and the science departments. And our goal is to always be looking at student achievement in the numbers and making sure that we curtail, making sure, good timing. You know,
excuse me.
You must have missed the MCAS overview. So essentially, this is somewhat modeled after the approach we're trying to take with data in the district, and structuring instruction in response to what we're seeing in the numbers, and not just always going on our gut instincts, although those play a very important role in the classroom. The numbers and the performance data also tell us a lot. So the basic process of analysis that we go through is the district level analysis, which you're seeing an overview of here tonight. And then the digging in really takes place at the school level. Each of the schools will do an analysis by grade level through grade level teams and or subject area teams, and report out to their faculty. That's where they'll go through, they'll look at questions, they'll look at responses to questions, try and determine why and how students may have responded to a particular question in a certain way. They'll look at trends in terms of the different standards and how we're doing in them. Is there anything that really stands out to us as an area of curriculum that we need to focus on? For example, you'll hear me talk briefly later on about literary analysis is definitely an area we want to take a look at. It may not be true of every school at every grade level, so that's where the school-based analysis comes in. I've highlighted student analysis, identification of students for intervention and remediation, because I really believe this is where we're at as a district in terms of making gains for our whole. Gains for individual students and gains in moving students from proficient to advanced and needs improvement to proficient. We've done very well casting a broad net. We're strongly aligned to the frameworks. We do a lot of work articulating across schools and vertically across grade levels with what we're doing. So there's not a lot that we have to do in terms of tweaking what we're teaching when, or the sequence that we're teaching it in. What we need to do is identify and reach out to students and help remediate their individual needs. Because we're really looking at a cluster of kids that bounce back and forth between needs improvement or proficient and advanced, and a question or two can do that to you if you're right on the cusp. So I think more targeted interventions are going to be what's needed for us to make more gains. We also go through the process of communicating the information. I'm here tonight to share the overview with you. We talk about it at Administrative Council, and we'll talk about it in two district-wide venues, our Curriculum Council meetings and our district-wide grade level meetings, which we have during the release days. So that's basically the process that we go through. What I've been looking at over the past couple of weeks is the broad district information. And there's, like I said before, a lot of it. This is a grid. Again, you'll be able to go online and blow it up if you really want to dig in and see the data. And most of them are available. Most of these pieces are available through the DOE in some way, shape, or form, but again, it'll be on the website for anyone who wants to log on and take a look. The overview, essentially the highlights are this. Our overall strengths, we are consistently above state average. We had a strong district showing this year in the rankings that is put out by the Boston Globe. And that ranking is done by combining proficient and advanced scores and then creating a master list of all of the districts and then all of the schools by grade level in the town. The district was very strong, the high school was very strong, little school had a strong showing in the elementary. Our 7th grade at the middle school in math had a wonderful showing. So there are lots of highlights throughout, and there are also some areas where we clearly need to improve and bring schools or grade levels along with the rest of the district. Now, as part of our analysis, we're going to look under the hood. I mean, the rankings kind of tell us how we're doing comparatively with other districts, but they don't tell us why we're there. And that's really the work that we need to focus on. What's going on? What do we need to address? And I think as we're working with data in the district, whether it's our common assessments or the MCAS data, Terra Novas when they come in, or SATs, it's okay, we're here, but what can we learn from it so we can get better in the future? And that's really the hardest piece to get over, I think, in looking at data, is not taking it as a personal affront or a failure, but really seeing it as a constructive piece of information which we can improve upon. One thing we're going to take a really quick look at is consistent performance of classes over time. When you look at something like the rankings, or you look at the scores that come out, there's a tendency to show 10th grade last year versus 10th grade this year, and how did we do? And that's wonderful, but they're different kids and they're different tests. So there's a lot of variables involved. I think where we're at, and in terms of helping kids make gains, and individual kids and groups of kids make gains, we really need to look at them longitudinally and study the class over time and how they're progressing. And now that we've kind of gotten into a pattern, I mean, with the MCAS and the yearly testing, you can start to see that our kids are very consistent within a few percentage points and tend to make growth over time. Good example. Yeah.
Good question on that. So, but what happens is you lose. So once they move from 5th grade, though, you kind of lose that consistency on how to track them as a specific group. In other words, say we had one school that wasn't performing as well as another in the elementary level, but when they move into 6th grade, you then lose that because they're all mixed together, right? So you kind of have to start over again in terms of tracking the classes, correct?
Well, we always have the district numbers.
Right, right.
And that's the numbers I've continued with along the way.
Okay.
I haven't sub-sectioned out the batch kids, the little kids, and the hood kids of the 6th grade.
I guess that's what I'm getting at. There's a certain grade with a certain subject with a certain group. It's really difficult, I guess, to try to follow them as they get into 6th, 7th, and 8th, right? To make sure that certain individuals are making.
If we wanted to commission a study, I believe we probably can pinpoint what the information we're looking for.
Just to add, though, the Department of Education is piloting what's called the Data Warehouse Project, and when this goes fully online, all districts will have, all teachers would have access exactly to that kind of information.
That's good.
So you could tell if it's a weakness in the ex-elementary school.
You'd be able to do any kind of search. Right now, other than sitting there with paper and pencil and doing it, which would be incredibly laborious, it would take just a phenomenal amount of time and not productive time, this data warehouse project is designed to provide that tool for each, not just school district, but school and then teachers. So I'm the 6th grade math teacher. I'm going to be able to track those kids real time with where they've been. And
grades 1 through 5,
exactly.
right.
And if I can give the faculty a pat on the back, I think they're already there in terms of where we're using common assessments. And the elementary's really been in the forefront of this. Again, the science departments at the middle and high school have also been right out front. But they are getting common assessment data, and they do mirror the format of an MCAS. So we're learning as we go where kids are strong and where kids are weak, where groups are strong and weak, where instruction needs to be fine-tuned, and they're making adjustments continually. We certainly haven't perfected it yet, and we're learning, again, how do we use this process, how do we use it efficiently, how do we turn things around in quick enough time. But I think we're starting to address those pieces before somebody serves up a report to us and says, you need to go and fix this in this location. I think people have a self-awareness. One real positive coming out of last year, and it was our first shot at it in some time. I'm not sure if I believe back about 6 or 7 years ago, we did have MCAS summer academies. During the year, the elementary schools, 2 of the elementary schools ran after-school or morning programs to remediate students who were in danger of failing MCAS. And the preliminary numbers out of that is between 60 and 80%, depending on grade level and subject area, moved from needs improvement to the proficient category as a result of receiving some of that targeted assistance. So that kind of keeps going back to our theme. We know targeted assistance is where we need to put some of our time and resources, and I think we're going to have an opportunity to do that when I talk to you about Title I in a minute. Annual AYP, or the annual yearly progress report, just tells us that we are consistently moving forward and meeting our target scores. It's a proficiency index. We have to gain X amount of points per year to show that we're continually moving the kids forward. We're doing well. All schools in all subgroups that's in the schools made AYP. Hood is the only elementary school with a large enough group. It has to be 40 or more students to be identified and reported on as a SPED subgroup, and the Hood houses the learning-based program. So they do have a large SPED population. I believe the raw number was 48 students between the third and fifth grade span, but though that group did make AYP at the Hood, so they met their targets. However, when you take the entire SPED subgroup from the district, so you combine it with the Little and the Batch and the Hood, that whole group together did not make its target. So it did not make AYP district-wide. So that's an area we're going to have to focus on next year. It was only in English language arts. Clearly some indicators that we need to look at in terms of doing some remediation. And again, Title I is back online this year, so we think we're going to be able to nip this in the bud.
Are all students with an IEP classified as SPED students? Is that how that works?
Yes. Yeah. And it's not to say that some of those students aren't in our advanced category.
Right.
It's just when they take that aggregate group and they look at that target number, we didn't make it. When I wrote in, we need to investigate the cause, because when you look at the individual school reports, if you don't meet that 40 student cutoff, they don't report on whether or not you've made the AYP. You have to hit that 40 to get a reporting out. So we kind of have to dig through and do a more targeted search of who didn't make it and for what reasons. This is what I spoke about a little bit earlier in terms of looking at classes over time. This year's class, last year's 10th grade class, this year's 11th grade class, or the class of 2010, if you take a look at their performance I just found it was very interesting, and again, I think we learn a lot more about what we're doing with a particular group of kids. They were fairly consistent, making gains, always making gains in ELA, and then really skyrocketing in mathematics. And I know, Mel, you had mentioned before that 60% advanced in math in the 10th grade. So I think what our job now to do is to go back and take a look at why did they make steady progress? Why was there such a shoot up in grade 10? Why were we able to put so many kids into the advanced category? One thing we've talked a little bit about is grade 10 is cumulative of the K-10 program. So it's not like you get a brand new set of information in grade 10 and then you're tested on it at the end. It's really the work of everyone who's come before and every teacher that students had in their attempts to teach to the individual, remediate the areas of concern, and move the student forward. The high school does a fantastic job with that 2-year span that they get in 9th and 10th grade. They have targeted support. They have MCAS support classes and tutoring for students who've been identified with needs improvement. They can either get it in the course of their day, or they can get additional tutoring during Power Block. The significant gains, we think to a certain degree, comes from the implementation of algebra in grade 8, because they've been introduced to the topic earlier. We've learned a lot from that process, and I think when you see the 7th grade scores this year, I think you're going to see the benefit of another piece that we put in place. But they got introduced to that early, they got remediation and practice along the way, and we think that's helped their scores. We're going to have to look into it a little bit deeper. One thing that's online for the high school is the introduction of the EPP, or the Educational Proficiency Plan. All students in the class of 2010 have to score or show proficiency, score 240 or show proficiency through an alternate method in order to graduate. We have 16 students in ELA and 20 in math who will have to write plans for. The state is proposing to do an EPP retest, which is different from the failure retest. I know it's a lot of acronyms and numbers, and so just stop me if you have questions. So essentially, there should be 2 opportunities for kids to retake and not have to implement a plan. On the 22nd, I'm going to be going over to Greater Lawrence to hear more detail on it. But essentially, John and I